Hello everyone, this is Holly from Loop, hoping a few folks will join me for our Hangout today. We have started something new on Loop, which is the theme of the month, and our theme for June is books. And we have several posts and groups on Loop that talk about books. And I'm hoping that several loopers will join me to talk about The Little Prince. We have a group on Loop for The Little Prince, book group, book club, with posts for every chapter. And we are going to talk about that and practice reading the story out loud here, if folks join me. So I'm waiting to see if a few other members will join in today. Several members RSVP'd or responded that they would attend today. So I'm hoping that we will see several loopers find their way here. So have you read The Little Prince? Are you reading it now? Do you have favorite parts of the book that you remember? Quotes that you might share? Do you remember reading this in another language, perhaps not English? Studying it in school? So I hope I will not be talking to myself today. Hangouts are really a time for me to listen and hear you practice your English. So we're using Joanna's post. Joanna started our Little Prince book group. And there's Joanna joining us. Hello.
Hi.
I was just talking about you.
Nice.
I was just going to start reading, since I was talking to myself. I was going to start reading from your post on chapter 1 of The Little Prince to try and get people remembering some of what it's about. You might be able to help me. Did you join from the link I posted on Loop?
Yes.
Okay, so that link did work. Yay. So many changes on Hangouts recently, and they've changed the way that you copy and share, so I wasn't sure if that was the correct link. And I don't see anyone crying for help on how to join, so I'm not sure. I do want to mention, perhaps in case others are listening, that Sasakumar had mentioned he'd had some trouble connecting to Loop. So loopers, if you are listening and you've had trouble the last day or two signing in to Loop, please send me a note or post a note on Loop somewhere so that I am more aware of that, because I'm not sure what that problem was.
Me either. I don't have problems.
Yeah, and the Little Prince hasn't had a problem. He's logged in regularly. Watered our rose and kept our sight blooming. I did have a little trouble this morning with my computer, lots and lots of updates. So maybe if you restart your computer, totally shut it down and reboot it, maybe some updates will solve the problem. I see he's back on now, so he found a way back in. So, Little Prince,
Yes.
when was the last time you reread the story?
The last time, probably the last year.
And do you have favorite quotes from the book or thoughts that you think of?
From Little Prince? Oh, I don't remember now. Probably any quotes from The Little Prince are my favorite.
That's a cop-out response. When you think about the book, or when the Little Prince pops into your mind, what kind of situations make you remember the Little Prince? For me, when I see a rose with thorns or a watering can, I often remember little bits from the book. But are there certain times that remind you?
No.
No. So you'll have stories come as we talk about it, maybe. So you wrote for chapter 1 a quote you shared. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is exhausting for children. Oops, and I just lost my. Sorry, I lost trying to stretch my view so I could read the whole thing, and I lost it. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is exhausting for children to have to provide explanations over and over again.
Yeah, because children understand the world in a very easy and simple way. And grown-ups know more things about world, and they see it in a more complicated way than children.
Yes, grown-ups do like to complicate things. I actually was quite good at complicating things from a fairly early age. And I still like to complicate things. So you agree with this quote. We need more loopers here to share with us what they think.
Sometimes lots of funny situations when I talk with my nephews, for example, and they still understand some things in an easy way and in literal.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to do that. And you questioned whether or not whether parents were trying to say that their children should be unhappy, because when the parents try to complicate a simple something with an explanation or try to tell them what they must do, we sometimes
Elders know meanings of lots of idioms, expressions, and children still learn some expressions. So if you use, when you talk with a kid and you use an idiom or some expression which you use in your daily life, some children might not understand it.
But this is partially how they learn.
Yes.
Yeah. So you continued with something from the first chapter. The grown-ups advised me to put away my drawings. So then I had to choose another career. And this was what led you into talking about how sometimes parents push us into the career they think is best for us.
Yes.
I've had many students and friends and complained to my friends about sometimes about guidance that my parents gave. Many people complain. Sometimes 20 or 30 years later they thank their parents. So how do you know?
I don't know. I sometimes see at school how parents may hurt their children because they push them into different things than the kids like.
Yeah.
So sometimes one or two decisions which parents think this decision is good for children, it's not really good for the children.
But sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is, but sometimes they hurt children.
Yeah, I do agree that this sometimes happens, but I also feel it's challenging to, yes, want your child to dream, but also want your child to be somewhat practical and explore many options. And it's difficult to gauge how much is true lifelong passion. How can you gauge that? And to determine how much might be a step to another career or might mean this is a hobby and you need to focus on something else now. We put children in our educational system, we do the same thing. We put children in boxes. And then we send them out and say, okay, find your box or follow your box. And this is sort of changing some, but is a challenge. Yeah. So in the first chapter, we meet a boa constrictor, and you've chosen magnificent, digestion, masterpiece, abandon, and enlighten as vocabulary. So what do a boa constrictor, magnificence, digestion, or indigestion, masterpieces, abandonment, and enlightenment have to do with chapter 1 of The Little Prince?
Because the main character of The Little Prince drew a boa constrictor as his first masterpiece. But it wasn't a masterpiece, really.
But it was, right? When you're a child, it is a masterpiece.
Boy thought about his work as a masterpiece. Yeah, and he thought that this boa constrictor is magnificent and we should admire it.
So do you admire boa constrictors? Boa constrictors, excuse me. Do you admire boa constrictors?
No. But for this kid, this animal was beautiful.
And how would you describe a boa constrictor?
A big snake.
I would probably add even additional adjectives such as terrifying or stay out of my way, not an adjective, but yes, a boa constrictor is not what I consider a friendly, magnificent fellow. I don't even like seeing them when they are supposedly safely behind glass. in a zoo, I'm still nervous around boa constrictors, but they are fascinating, scary things in nature when you step back from them and try to just study them. Boa constrictors constrict by coiling around and squeezing, constricting. That's how they kill their prey or keep them held long enough to swallow them. And not a pleasant image. But the little prince starts out, once when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Stories from Nature about the primeval forest. It was a picture of a boa constrictor in the act of swallowing an animal. Here is a copy of the drawing that he saw. In the book it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing it. After that, they are not able to move, and they sleep through the 6 months that they need for digestion. So it would be definitely a change in eating habits if you were to swallow one thing and then just be so full and stuck in place for 6 months while your body digested food. Sometimes I feel like that after a Thanksgiving dinner. But so very different from how our bodies process food. So when I read this, I think of the words pray versus pray, P-R-A-Y versus P-R-E-Y. And I think of synonyms. So a synonym for pray, P-R-E-Y. For a boa constrictor might be victims. Whoever they decide they are going to eat. So victims or food, in this case, would be who the prey are. What kind of prey do boa constrictors eat in real life?
Mice, maybe little animals, rats.
Yeah, and sometimes larger animals. I know one of the things that fascinated me about snake study when I could get past my ew factor is how proportionately when you watch them, I remember in the zoo they used to feed some snakes whole chickens, big chickens, and you just see this big lump, sort of like the masterpiece that the little prince draws. Would you like to read the next section? Do you need the link to the online
No, I have.
copy? Okay.
Not where did you finish?
So you would start below the picture, and I pondered deeply is where you would start.
I pondered deeply, then over the adventures of the jungle. And after some work with a colored pencil, I succeeded in making my first drawing. My drawing number 1. It looked something like this.
And we can't. I don't have it. I don't have it in Google Drive, so I can't show the picture here. But his magnificent masterpiece.
Yes.
And the grown-ups liked the hat. So I love this story because I think it happens a lot in real life when a child shows a picture and the child is absolutely impressed with his or her artistic talent and then what the parents see or the person they show it to sees is nowhere close to what the child wants them to see. Very common phenomenon. And when you read The Jungle, whenever I see the word jungle, ever since I saw Jungle Book as a child, I still think of the Jungle Book, and I picture happy jungle creatures dancing around the jungle. But then I try to think about that realistically, and if I was scampering through the jungle and a boa constrictor was across my path or hanging down in front of my nose, I would not be so happy-go-lucky. I might dance in a mad dash, run away. So in this picture that looks like a hat to some people, looks like a hat with a little bit of a crush on one side and an awfully long brim, but could be a man's hat. But what are we really supposed to see in there? What does the little prince think is obvious in his magnificent masterpiece?
It's a boa constrictor eating a big elephant.
So do you think a boa constrictor could actually eat a big elephant? Or would that be stretching the limits of...
Maybe not a boa constrictor, but the other snakes.
Other snakes that might be able to eat an elephant? Baby elephants.
But the little elephant.
But little elephants are quite large.
Yeah, but some snakes are able to eat deer.
Yeah, and little elephants, a little chubbier,
Yeah.
but comparable.
Maybe.
So I don't want to meet such a snake. If they're capable of eating a small elephant, they might think I look appetizing. Not a fun imagination. So please continue.
I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them whether the drawing frightened them. But they answered, "Frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat?"
Ooh, wrong thing to say. Now, most parents, if their child reacted that way, would smarten up and answer in a different way, because they would recognize that they were in trouble and perhaps try and elicit an explanation from the child. But poor little Prince did not have that experience. He quite righteously says, would you like to continue, or would you like me to?
My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. But since the grown-ups were not able to understand it, I made another drawing. I drew the inside of a boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could see it clearly. They always need to have things explained. My drawing number 2 looked like this.
I like his drawing number 2. What's wrong with you parents? Yeah, why can't you see this? But I also imagine a child who shows and asks them whether the drawing frightened them. And they say, frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat? My drawing was not a picture of a hat. I would expect a bit more reaction. But then I like his approach. This is a very problem-solving, creative thinking approach to his challenge. Why indeed? So if he showed you picture number 2, would you be frightened?
No. Why?
But listen to the reaction. The grown-up's response, this time, was to advise me to lay aside my drawings of boa constrictors, whether from the inside or the outside, and devote myself instead to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. That is why, at the age of 6, I gave up what might have been a magnificent career as a painter. I had been disheartened by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things to them. And there's where your first quote came in. So I like this start of the book, and it's this start of the book, for me, that tells me it is a book for children and for children of all ages, because I still enjoy reading it. And at 59, I'm no longer what most people can call a child. So in many libraries, The Little Prince is on shelves in young adult, in children's literature, and on the adult bookshelves, sometimes with different editions. The covers will look more adult-like for the adult shelves. But do you know in your libraries where The Little Prince is shelved, where it's kept?
Oh, no. But mostly we have, in our libraries, we have books by the author name.
And mixed children's and adults, all?
Mostly, yes.
Ah, okay. So this is
Our
different.
libraries are totally different than
Yeah,
yours.
so I understand. Yeah. Something interesting to learn about. So I'm hoping this month with our June books theme that we'll have several people writing about their libraries and giving us more information about what it's like to visit a library.
Sometimes you may see divided into categories, like science, criminals, romances, tales.
Similar to a bookstore.
Yeah.
That's how our bookstores are often categorized. And where would you find Little Prince in a bookstore? Do you know?
About under the letter E.
Okay, so by the author. So the same in a bookstore then, not always, so not a separate children's section?
Sometimes there are separate sections.
Okay. Interesting. So this is a challenge for everyone listening, to check the bookstore or library near you, and or tell us in your own home if you have a copy of The Little Prince in any language. Where is it kept? Is it more associated with children's stories, or casual reading, or permanent bookshelf to show off to the world? Where is the Little Prince, and where should he be? Where do you think he falls? What's your answer to that, Joanna? Where do you think he's best relegated?
I would put it in a casual books, just for everyone.
Yeah, and it's the kind of book I think is fun to pick up, even if you don't have time to read the whole thing, because once you've read it 2 or 3 times, even once, sometimes the memory of different favorite parts might come to you, and it's an easy book to flip through and smile and remember. So we have many chapters ahead, and I'm not going to have us read it aloud unless you want to, because I want other loopers to come and join us and practice. And I'll give you a chance to give a plug for your group and encourage people to join and post.
Yeah, the Little Prince is very little, tiny, thin book. And the chapters are also quite short. So you may read one chapter by every day. The language is, in my opinion, quite easy to understand. And there are many interesting, fun and funny drawings, pictures describing some things from the book. So probably the good book to start reading in English. And I think many people will not spend lots of time to reading these books.
Will not spend lots of time, meaning it doesn't take much time, or they won't bother? I think lots of people won't spend much time makes me think of a negative, and I'm wondering if you mean that as a negative or if you mean that as
it's
a positive.
Positive because it has
so better is
you may spend 10-15 minutes every day to read one chapter.
Yeah, so just as a general expression, many people won't take much. Sounds like a negative, and so it won't take much time. Sounds more positive, or you might only need a few minutes. Sounds more positive to encourage. I have on the site also added the literature circles PowerPoint that I have that talks about ways to talk about books. And I think The Little Prince is perfect for all of these. So if we have a large group, there's a discussion director role who would just sort of make sure everyone has a turn. I generally take that facilitating role, but I gladly hand it over to someone else. The discussion director might be the one who says, so what I hear you saying is, or what I think you are saying, and just a guide. The creative connector is a role I love, my favorite, because my head goes in many directions. So you talked about your nephews. That was a creative connection. And comparing the fact that you have heard of snakes who do swallow deer, so therefore a deer to a baby elephant may not be too much of a stretch. I shared about Jungle Book. My crazy brain finds creative connector very, very easy. Some people don't. But when you look at all these possible ways to talk about a book, you can usually make some connections. So vocabulary vitalizer is the one who shares, as you did in your post, a few vocabulary words from the chapter that you think might be fun for people to learn, to use again, to use for an exam, to practice pronunciation. When you're learning a language, vocabulary can be chosen for many different reasons. And of course, practice, practice, practice. You can use them in sentences. You can record yourself practicing so you can make connections with vocabulary. And then the idea illustrator is a perfect one for The Little Prince, since that's exactly what he does in the first chapter. Is he has this idea from a book he read, and he tries to draw to illustrate for us what happened when people called his magnificent drawing a hat. How dare they? Bosh. And so he sketched. So you could sketch other scenes that the Little Prince has not illustrated for us, and you could share them on the site before our live classes, and certainly in your group. There are lots of ways to connect. And then Character Captain is one I like. So the Little Prince is obviously a main character in this book, but what are some of the other characters we come across? The character
there are many
might,
characters.
might be a person, or it could, sometimes they're inanimate objects. So what are some of the characters you remember?
A fox, a rose,
A fox, a
rose,
rose, yes, for sure. Mm-hmm.
And lots of the Little Prince, and lots of people who Little Prince met during his journey.
Do you remember any in particular? I remember somebody to do with maps.
Alcoholic.
An alcoholic, okay. So
The accountant.
an accountant? I don't remember the accountant, okay.
Yeah, there was a person who counted something.
Yeah, I remember there were several.
And
yeah.
Joe? No.
Yeah, but there are many characters,
Yes.
and sometimes it's fun in literature to pull a character out and tell what you think might have happened if the character had done something else, or just follow that character through the book. In The Little Prince, there are a few characters that go through more than one chapter, but mostly we follow the Little Prince and the Rose, and but it can be fun to focus on characters and make sure the rest of us are noticing the important things about a character or what you found important. And then Literary Illuminator is one who chooses small passages, excerpts to share. So you've done that. In the chapter 1 is quite short, so you've chosen a few sentences. Sometimes it's shorter paragraphs or parts of a page that can be shared. But I think it's helpful when it helps everybody when you have a book group on our Loop site, and you can go back and see those little excerpts. They help you refresh your mind on what happened in that chapter, and often help you connect to future chapters and events. And then there's an essence extractor. I like literature circles because they have alliterative names. They all have the same letter, so Character Captain and Literary Illuminator, Essence Extractors. I didn't spell that right, but so you extract the essence of a chapter. So chapter 1, what is the essence of chapter 1? Sometimes this is hard. Sometimes it's easy.
The grown-ups complicate everything.
Okay. That certainly was impetus for his journey. The grown-ups complicating his life. So that might be your essence extractor. And many loopers like to debate, so you might have other loopers that come back and say, no, no, no. And share what they think is the most important thing to remember from that chapter.
Okay.
And Travel Tracer is another one. So again, TTEELLCC, all these crazy alliterative names. But Travel Tracer is fun with The Little Prince. Why?
Because the main character and the Little Prince made lots of travels.
So it'd be fun to draw the map. He draws some pictures, but so the travel tracer is responsible for mapping out the directions that the book takes you. Sometimes it's a list of places, and sometimes it's an artist that uses graphic art tools and creates awesome things. But it's fun to imagine, and The Little Prince is a fun one for me to imagine tracing the travel of. And then we have RR, rigorous researcher. So for example, boa constrictors. We might not know a lot about them, and he read this nature book to learn more about them. So a rigorous researcher might give us a complete report on everything we do not want to know about boa constrictors. Or it could be into the psychology of parenting. Researcher chooses anything from the reading and goes into much more depth for it. So if you were assigned rigorous researcher for chapter 1, what do you think you might choose to research further?
Everything about the boa constrictors, something about hats.
Hats, oh yeah, hats would be fun. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah. History of hats is actually quite interesting, and the fads and fashion trends, and that type of used to be considered men's hat, but now it is often worn by women too, a similar style. But then the little prince would be upset with you. That's not a hat, because that's not a hat. But excellent choice. So I would love it if more loopers would get into these literature circle roles, because I really think it can help focus what you're supposed to do, make it less boring if everyone's not doing the same thing, and gives you lots to talk about.
I would be very happy to see more comments to my
discussions. Yeah, you did a thorough job and persistently went through the entire book, trying, begging. And so I hope that this month, with our theme of books, we can get more participation.
Maybe.
So Little Prince is easy to do in, even in English, reasonably easy, manageable to do in small doses, even along with your other reading. So what are you reading these days?
These days, my students' exam papers.
Exam papers. And are they entertaining?
Yes, very. Every day I learn something new about math.
So when they have to write about math, what kinds of questions are they asked? To explain a word problem, or is it explaining concepts?
Try to explain word problems. Sometimes I ask to write some definition or to find a connection with the real life. So I ask for examples from the real life where my students may find this or that problem.
Challenging.
Maybe challenging, but always when I start explaining some definitions, I start with everyday life, and I show them how they might connect.
So they've been
this
given
problem.
examples if they attended class and if they were paying attention. They've had
Yeah, so it's easy.
examples. So it should be easy. So you haven't had as much time for pleasure reading recently.
I hope so.
You hope you will soon. Okay. I read every night, no matter how tired I am. I have to read at least very, very rare, probably less than 10 times a year that I don't read before I fall asleep. So I'm a strong reader, and it took probably over 20 years, probably over 30 years. But I finally have my husband reading too, so he's now reading more often. Doesn't read the same things, but that's okay. So we have discussions on Loop. There's a book, several groups, and there are posts with a class listing here. If you visit our site and search for books or search our tag for the month, June-books, you'll find several posts where people are talking about books. And we're challenging everyone to try with most of their posts on the site, whether you're in the quotes group. I added a quote from a book I just finished, or the science group, or animals, or describing photos. Whatever group you're posting in, or a blog post, try to connect it somehow with a book, and add the June books connection. And I think it's pretty easy to do without too much effort for most posts. The challenge for me is remembering. So I have a little post-it that I have right here on my computer that says June books to try and remind me to keep the theme. It's our first month trying a theme, so we'll see if we can get more connections and have people talking about books. It can be ebooks, it can be excerpts from books, it can be comic books, it can be big novels, lengthy novels. Heavy books, we talked about heavy books in our text chat last week. So a book can be heavy because it's weighs a lot. Or it can be
heavy books.
Yes, I do as well. But it can also be heavy because the content can be heavy on your mind. It can be disturbing sometimes, or just won't leave you alone. It stays in your mind and you worry about it. This last book I finished was like that. Was described that way, as a disturbing novel. And it was. And I often ask myself why I enjoy reading disturbing novels. There's something wrong with that. So you like sci-fi, if I remember right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a genre I don't read a lot of. Any favorite titles or authors that you want to mention?
It's not rather from sci-fi, but Terry Pratchett.
What is it?
Terry Pratchett.
The Dairy Project? Dairy Project? Oh, tell the author, Terry Pratchett. Yes, okay. I think his name might be spelled a little different. I tried to read him last year on your recommendation. I might be spelling it wrong too. He has several books, right? If I remember right?
Yes.
I don't remember which one I read. I tried reading a couple. Okay. And it's fun to think authors. I like to read books that challenge me, and I like to read books that show me a different side of a place or a culture or a career that I haven't thought of before. Harry Potter? No.
Why?
You have lots of good company. I'm not my thing. I'm one of those strange people on earth who is not a huge Harry Potter fan. Mm. But I love the fact that others are. I like that people share a passion for literature. And when you say Harry Potter, my mind thinks Batman and Star Trek. Do you know why?
No.
Because here in the United States, in many places, they have conventions and special dinners and special events and special movie theater shows when the book has been made into a movie, where everyone's supposed to come dressed up like a character from the book. And they do this for Star Trek and Batman and Harry Potter. There are many people making a lot of money because people are dressing up like characters and gathering with other people who love the story. And I like that part of it. That part appeals to me. I like the joy of reading and sharing and developing characters and drama. Um, so that's my creative connection between Harry Potter and Batman and Star Trek.
You might.
One of my daughter's friends once drove 6 hours to attend one of those events for Harry Potter. And my daughter and several friends met at Disney World for the Harry Potter theme park.
Yeah, maybe the next time.
So lots of options there. So no one else has joined us. We've managed to kill almost an hour. Anything else related to The Little Prince or literature circles or books that you would like to share?
Books. Yeah, I still have lots of books on my list to read.
Me too.
I'm still thinking about reading Alice in the Wonderland.
Uh-huh.
Especially that it looks quite tiny.
I found that book challenging as a native English reader, and still do. But I think it's more because it's not my preference for style. So Alice in Wonderland, I keep trying to make myself reread because so many Jessica and others, so many teachers have such a passion for it and such fun. The book groups and classes have had a lot of fun. I can still picture the little book that my parents had for Alice in Wonderland. It really wasn't much bigger than this card. It was a real small book.
Yes.
And
I have also very small.
yeah. So it looked like it would be very easy to read through. But I honestly don't know if I've ever read it cover to cover. I don't think I've ever gotten through it.
Yeah, but the movie is quite fun.
Funny how some books just catch the world, like Winnie the Pooh stories. Are books that I'm not quite sure I would call adult reading, but many adults still use the quotes, and they brighten our lives because I think, like The Little Prince, it's life is simpler than, and sometimes being reminded to keep things simple is a nice reminder. I'm not sure Alice in Wonderland does that. I think maybe that makes things more complicated. I shared a picture of some of the books currently in my pile. I also sometimes attend a monthly book group where we choose one book a month that we all promise to try to read and then talk about it. Do you have such book groups in your area?
I don't know, but I know that in other cities there are book groups?
The group that I like best, there's several here. The one that I feel most comfortable with usually meets at lunchtime and has lunch at a different restaurant somewhere around town or at one of the homes of the members. And it's about 50-50 talking about the book and just social gathering. And there are many who meet at loud, boisterous bars or pubs or coffee shops. People find many different ways to share books. And now certainly more people are reading on ebooks, and you can pull out your ebook and they have their highlighted notes and things all prepared and technology. And of course you can meet online.
You may.
Which we're trying to do with the Little Prince. So come on, loopers.
Yeah.
Read with us and join us, please. Joanna worked hard, and the whole layout is there for you with the vocabulary vitalizer words for you to check and add to, and lots of creative connections, lots of excerpts, lots of questions to prompt your thinking. So practice your English with the Little Prince. I really appreciate your joining today, and I'm sorry that others aren't here. Maybe they don't like us, Joanna.
Maybe.
Huh. We'll have to put our hands on our hips like the Little Prince. But if anyone is listening, I hope you will join us. Joanna's not always able to, and she sacrificed her precious time to talk about her book group, and you're not here. Where are you? Loopers!
They are probably eating their dinners.
Eating sounds good. I didn't have time for coffee or breakfast yet, and it's noon. I had a blood test this morning and couldn't eat or drink more than just water before I left, and I dashed in the door and right on the computer. So that's a nice note to leave on. I will join the loopers in having some coffee and some lunch now. I'm not sure what I'll eat. So what's next on your agenda?
Today? Many things. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 piles of papers.
Ooh.
Work on.
All right, so you need a nice cup of something cold or hot, whichever is best. And
probably something hot because it's quite cold.
So the weather is still volatile there, not cooperating properly.
Rainy day. And
it's just cold. Getting all this out of the way.
So it's cold.
Yeah, so when I come, it's going to be beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Any last comments you would like to leave for the world?
Yes, please join us. Have fun with the Little Prince.
I hope.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so we'll end a few seconds early here today. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. We had several people that said they would be here, but they lied. Hopefully they'll join us next time. Okay, bye everybody. Bye, Joanna.
Thanks, bye.